Okay everyone, welcome again to the channel. Today we're back on GT Sport and we're back with another race in the FIA Manufacturers Championship. It's round number 1 of the new season, the Exhibition Season 2, driving the Group 3 cars at Fuji Speedway. You can see there, I'm actually starting from P2, although I'm actually not technically in that P2. There was a bit of a glitch in qualifying, which we'll talk about. Just behind me there, Derek, a very fast driver in the incredibly fast Golf, one of the fastest cars in the game down the straight line. In a straight line, sorry. So was a little bit worried about that car being behind me, because although it's not probably quite as good through the technical section as the Porsches, the straight line speed of that car more than makes up for any issues it was going to have through the slower corner. So I had to be very wary of that car behind me. Quite a reasonably okay lobby. I think there was 2,500 points available for this win. So I was actually looking in a very good position for it, because I was actually starting technically pole with a 1 minute 38.3, I think it was. Although it wasn't a perfect lap, I actually made a massive mistake on the last sector. Going into the second to last corner, I didn't quite hook up the corner, and then on the end of the final corner I actually ran wide and couldn't get on the power because I was on the curb. So I had to kind of back out of the power a bit, but somehow managed to go over the line with a 38.3, so I was actually quite happy that I was still pole position by technically 0.3 of a second. But obviously TTR Benson's lap, I don't know whether it's this new qualifying way they're doing it with the extra lap, whether it caused some sort of glitch with the qualifying for TTR Benson. I have no idea what happened, but he ended up randomly getting to the front of the grid, even though I think it said he was 1.6 seconds behind, but then he started from pole position. So I have really not got a clue what happened with the game. Now I've seen it happen before and some other people's videos and stuff, so it's maybe just a random bug that happens every now and then, but I've not seen it that much, so it's not really a massive issue. So he said he was going to move out the way at the start, which is really nice of him. I think we have to congratulate him for being a very honest driver, because a lot of people would have just stayed out there and just said they did that lap and would have probably kept it to themselves and started on pole and obviously wanted to win the race. But being a very honest person, he admitted that it glitched and moved over at the start. You're going to see now. So we're going to jump through to the TV replay camera. As you see, TTR Benson moves over to the right hand side, starts letting everyone through because he shouldn't really be in that position, and that's very, very honourable of him. As you can see, I'm moving over to the right hand side to try and avoid the slipstream of that Golf. You can see then getting back to the racing line. That Golf, just such a fast car down the street, has a little look up the inside, but I managed to get into the braking zone just in time and ahead of that Golf. Had a little moment on the exit there getting on the power, but going into turn 2 now and still in the lead. So got the worst part of that start out the way and managed to stay ahead of that Golf. You can see just how fast the Golf is, but then through this section, this is where the Porsche is going to be a little bit stronger. You know, the really fast corners, the corners that suit the Porsche. The Porsche really does excel at these corners, and also the last section was probably more of a Porsche section than it would than obviously a Golf section. The Golf is more of a straight line car. It's actually an okay car through corners, but it's not the most stable car compared to the Porsches we see now. Coming through to the very technical last sector, and the Golf is still very close to myself. So obviously I was a little bit worried that that long back straight was going to be an issue. I had to try and push through this section to try and build up enough of a lead to give myself a cushion going into turn 1. It's always, had to keep doing this. This is really important that I really push through this section. You can see managing to build up a little bit of a lead. Golf having a little moment there, twitching around, where he's obviously trying to get on the power. He knows also that he needs to be very close, because if he's within 7/10 of me, he's going to probably pass me into the start finishing line. So I go really wide out of that final corner to really get a strong exit from the corner and try and get as much speed out of the corner as possible, and actually really hook that up straight away. Going over to the right hand side of the track, trying to break that slipstream, and then straight away back over to the normal racing line. I could see that the gap was probably big enough to avoid him being able to make a move into turn 1, but with this Golf, anything can happen. The car just keeps accelerating so much faster than any other Group 3 car. The top gear is just unbelievable. So was a little bit worried until we get to the braking point, and I could see just about managed to hold that one there and get into the braking zone, still in the lead. So not a bad job on that opening lap there. And now obviously got to really try and concentrate on breaking that slipstream. It's not going to be easy. Obviously trying to push as much as I can, but avoid making errors also. You can see the gap staying just over half a second, because it's much through this section. This is where I'm going to be able to build the gap up. It's getting close to 0.8 of a second, but then as soon as we get to a point where you've got to get on the power and it's maximum throttle, that Golf is just going to come straight back up to the rear of the Porsche. It's just got so much power down the straights. And you can see there 0.7, but then watch the delta just decrease and decrease and decrease not much I can do about it there through this section. But then we're coming through to the technical section again, so now just got to try and concentrate, try and keep smooth, obviously trying to drive aggressive but not overly aggressive, that I'm going to make an error and give him a chance to get near the rear of my car, because I've got to be smooth. You know, if I make an error that costs me a tenth, it could be enough for him to pass me. So just trying to keep it nice and smooth through the last few corners, and then give myself a solid exit on the start finish. And you can see nearly breaking the slipstream there, up to a second, going into the final corner, down into first gear, and then trying to get a nice solid exit from that final corner. Had a little bit too aggressive on the throttle there, and that probably did give him the chance to get back in the slipstream. Was a little bit annoyed at myself there. Maybe I should have upshifted to second gear a little bit earlier than what I did, but obviously trying to be aggressive and getting on the power, and it's kind of affected my laps, the straight line speed down the straight. You can see, look how close he's getting already, from nearly a second back. He's got all the way up right behind my car, so that shows you that little mistake there, and that's given him the ability to get in the slipstream. And then that Golf, it doesn't even need the slipstream to really get the gains in the Porsche, so he was right back in it there, within half a second of my car now. And I've just got to keep pushing through these fast corners. Again, this is where the Porsche is going to be stronger. It's able to maintain obviously a tighter line through the corners, carrying more speed, and this is all about the Porsche this section now, the real fast flowing corners. And then we're going to get through to this little bit of a straight, which brings the Golf straight back into it there. You can see now from the power section in second gear all the way powering out of that corner, the Golf can gain about maybe a tenth to 2 tenths now, all the way to the next braking zone. So it manages to claw enough back just to get back in the slipstream. So quite frustrating for myself. I feel I had the speed at this point, and one thing I did know was also the Porsche is probably a bit better on the tyres than that Golf, especially with this very exaggerated tyre wear they've got going on at the moment. So I felt like if I could hold on to lap 5 and obviously do the longest stint on the first stint, then that would be the best plan, and maybe be able to pull a bit away from him on the lap 6, because I thought the Golf was going to struggle a bit on lap 6 with obviously the tyre wear issues. As we go through to the final corner now, trying to get on the power nice and early, keeping it smooth as possible. You see much better than we did before, running a little bit wide, but that's okay because I kept on the power. And just about, I think there, 7 tenths is enough there to defend into turn 1. You can see trying to break that slipstream again, moving over, Derek following the slipstream, trying to ensure that he's picking up as much speed advantage as he can. Just look at in the mirror, you can see that Golf getting closer and closer and closer. It's such a fast car, but luckily into the braking zone, still in P1, just 3 tenths ahead. So from 7 tenths to 3 tenths, it really does gain down that straight. And now just holding on to P1. This is actually quite, it's quite a tense battle this, because they're two very different cars. The Golf, obviously, I think the Porsche is a better car at this track, but because of that slipstream, it's just so hard to lose that Golf from obviously the rear, and obviously with the power of that car, it is a real effort to try and get away from it. All he's got to really do is stay within 1 second, from when he's 3 tenths behind going into turn 1. If he stays within 9 tenths by the end of the lap, he can always claw it back because of the back straight. So it's really interesting racing. You see a gap developing now between P2 and P3, and then P4 just behind P3, and then a bit of a gap to Machiavelli there in P5. So got a bit of a comfortable gap. It's looking like a 2-horse race in this race so far. It's pretty much developing into that, a 2-car race, sorry, as we come through to the final sector now, and just trying to keep as much on smoothness as possible, because look how close he is now as we come through to the final corner. You can see I'm trying to be aggressive but smooth at the same time. It's not as easy as it looks to be like that. You've got to really be concentrating 100%. Obviously the pressure's on at this moment. I was feeling the pressure. Derek driving really well behind me, I have to say, driving exceptionally well in that Golf to put me under pressure like this. A moment on the rear there, getting on the power, where I'm trying to get as much power out of the car as possible for this straight. You can see he's very close this time. Is he going to be able to make a move now into turn 1? I'm moving back over to the racing line to try and get into this turn 1, but you can see I'm going to have to go defensive into turn 1. You can see how much of a speed advantage his car is getting, so I'm going to go defensive down the right hand side. He's going to go down left, and I totally missed the braking zone. I wasn't looking. Luckily what I did do though was I didn't panic too much. I was annoyed at myself, but I kept the braking in a straight line and was very cautious getting back onto the track. So although it has cost me quite a big deal, you can see nearly 4 seconds behind, and I've got a bit of dirt on my tyre, so I'm going to lose a little bit of time for a few corners on this lap. So let's see, it's 4.3 seconds behind P1, so I've lost about 4.5 seconds just by that one silly mistake. So was beating myself up a little bit at this point. I was annoyed because I felt like I had this race covered. If I could have, I think if I would have held him off on that lap, this is where the Golf was probably going to start struggling. So now in this situation, I've got Machiavelli behind me, obviously a very fast driver in that Mercedes, and I've got to try and keep it smooth. Although I think I took quite a lot of life out of my tyres on the opening stint. You know, I was quite a way ahead. I was about 4.5 seconds further up the field than where I am now. So a little bit of a costly mistake that, and I was a bit annoyed at myself. But because I was looking in the mirror where he was going, I wasn't paying attention to the brake markers, and then I lost track of the first brake marker, which I was then looking for the wrong one. And when I did realise it before, obviously it was too late, because I think if it would have been a little bit later, it would have gone straight into the wall and picked up a lot of damage. But I managed to brake in a straight line. That was a key. I didn't panic. I didn't try and turn my way through the corner. I just braked in a straight line, because I think if I would have turned, I would have ended up spinning and going into the gravel. But now I've got to pit this lap, because obviously I could see other cars pitting, and I don't want them to get a massive advantage on me by doing the undercut. So I've got to try and do the undercut and see if I can gain anything now, because fresh tyres should gain me about 1.5 seconds or so over Derek, you know, obviously with the undercut. And let's hope we can come out the pits ahead of any traffic. You can see the cars on the left hand side coming out, but just about make it into turn one ahead of them cars. And that is really important, that, because if I got stuck behind them cars, that could have been a disaster. I would have been stuck behind cars with older tyres. You can see Machiavelli just stuck behind that car behind me. But is he going to be able to pass him fairly quick? He should be able to get past fairly easy on these right hand corners with the traction difference between the cars. And it looks like he's actually let Machiavelli pass, which is fairly nice of him to do that. And I do like to see that, you know, when cars are racing other cars that aren't really in a race together, I do like to see the cars let people pass like that, because it doesn't make sense to battle people in that situation. You know, if you haven't pitted yet, you're going to try and hold them up. You're going to slow your own race down. It's best just to let that car past who's got the fresh tyres on, and then you follow their slipstream for as much as possible and gain out of them. You know, they're the faster car. Let them help you out instead of holding each other up and you lose time. But now I've got a situation where I've broke the slipstream. You see 1.1 seconds ahead, but I'm starting to get dirty air from these cars, and these cars are really struggling on the old tyres. I've got the Toyota in front of me, and look at the difference in grip. I'm going into the corner, he's just got no grip. I actually touched him a little bit on the rear there, but Machiavelli's managed to get about 4 or 5 tenths on me just on this last sector, where I just can't, it's not an overtaking zone. There's no way you can really get past, so I've just got to be patient and then get on the throttle and try and defend now into turn one from Machiavelli. So staying in the slipstream of P6 for as long as possible. You see as they're going in the pits, picking up a little bit more of a boost down the straight, and that should be enough to defend now into P1 from Machiavelli as we go into turn one. Have we managed to jump anyone in the pits? It's going to be close with Magic Alonso as he's coming out the pits there. He was quite a bit ahead as we went in the pits, and he's managed to just come out in front of me. This was a little bit frustrating again for myself, because I really did want to be able to get past him. But you can see Derek only just up there, 2.4 seconds ahead of me. So we have managed to gain nearly 2 seconds in that pit stop with the undercut. But now these drivers are going to have the fresher tyres, as we're going to try and put Magic Alonso under pressure, but we didn't need to do that. He got on the curb with the power on and has lost the rear of that Toyota. A silly mistake really, but maybe he was put under a little bit of pressure, and unfortunate for him, but pretty fortunate for us. Now we're in P3, and now I can try and put some times down, try and put a bit of speed down on the track and see if I can catch up to P2. So try and do some concentration. Obviously I'm still a little bit hot-headed at this stage. I was still beating myself up, to be fair, about that silly mistake, because it was a very, very daft mistake to make. You know, I wasn't really, I think if I would have just got the braking right, there was no way that Golf was going around the outside of me on turn one. But you know, sometimes you make silly mistakes, and I'm sure I'll make up for it in other races. But now you can see managing to gain quite a bit of time on that BMW already. I don't know if he was struggling. He pitted the same time as us, but he seems to be struggling. Maybe the pressure was a little bit of pressure getting to him, I don't know. But you can see he's actually getting fairly close to Derek also. But then we've got this really long straight where Derek's just able to put that power down and increase that gap to the BMW. And now I've just got to try and pick up the slipstream of the BMW in front of me and see if I can get close enough to make a move anywhere on the track. As we now coming into turn one, you can see not really close enough to make any sort of move. P5 Machiavelli has a little look there, but again not really close enough to make any sort of a move. No real opportunity to dive on the inside there, and I kind of knew that he wouldn't do it. He's not the type of driver to just make a random move like that. So now I've got to really put some pressure on P2 and try and get past him. I wanted that P2 back. You know, I wanted P1 obviously, but I felt like P1 was a little bit out of the question now, because obviously my tyres are a little bit older, but P2 in front of me has also got the same age tyres as myself. He pitted the same lap, and I felt like I had more pace than him. I felt like pretty confident that if I can get close to him, I might be able to get past him, although the BMW is a fairly fast car down the straight. It is probably a bit faster than the Porsche and the Mercedes. I think the Porsche, out of these three cars, the car behind me and the car in front, are actually faster down the straights, but the Porsche gets better exits. So if I can get good strong exits, I might be able to pick up a really strong slipstream of that BMW. And you can see that BMW is really struggling at this stage. He's driving a little bit scruffy. Will I be able to get really close to him? And I've got to stay as close to the rear of this car in front as we come out the final corner. If I can be within 3/10 of him in the slipstream, there's a chance that slipstream will boost me past him as we come into the braking zone. So let's have a little look now, going into the final corner, taking quite a wide line you're going to see here, because I really want to excel on the exit of the corner and pick up a really big boost. You can see a little bit of loose rear end as I'm trying to get on the power, but look how close I am to him. 3/10 behind, just under 3/10 behind now, and I'm picking up the perfect slipstream at this point. This is where the slipstream really does, you really get such a boost in slipstream. As we're going to go to the right hand side, he's going to go defensive. Is he going to be able to hold off in the braking zone? It looks like we're past him already, and I think he's just tucking in behind us, hitting the braking zone, going into braking zone pretty much okay, but he actually gives us a little nudge there where he's obviously outbraked himself a bit, but no harm done, and back into P2. So this is really important. Now the only issue is we're about 2.5 seconds behind P1, nearly 3 seconds behind P1, so a little bit of time lost out battling, but the most important thing is we've recovered ourselves back into a reasonable position. Obviously round one I wanted to pick up some okay points. It was looking like I had a chance of picking up some really big points, and I think the fact that we've managed to get this gap down to under 3 seconds from being 4.4, and then we're actually maintaining a fairly equal pace to Derek now, even though we're on older tyres. It does show that I think I had the speed to probably take the win in this race. It's just a bit unfortunate I made that very silly mistake, but you know, Derek did a great job putting me under pressure, so it was because of his pressure that I made that silly mistake, and I've just got to try and learn from that again and not make a similar error like that again, because it's not very common I make an error like that. You know, missing your braking zone like that, it's just a silly mistake, and I will try not to do that again. But you can see actually keeping this gap now to Derek around 2.6, 2.7 seconds. He's not really increasing it that much, so it actually shows you, you know, the pace was there even on older tyres, and this is why I think towards the end of the stint I would have been gaining on Derek a little bit towards lap 5 and 6, because this is where his tyres are going to suffer a bit, as I'm going to go defensive and try and lose that slipstream slightly on the right hand side. But it looks like the BMW is not interested in trying to do that. Maybe you can see that the car behind him is obviously very close. Maybe he should have tried to pick up the slipstream slightly, because he might have been able to defend a bit then going into turn 1, as Machiavelli is obviously going to try and make a move on him as soon as possible if he can get a good enough slipstream. As you can see in the mirror behind me, he goes defensive. It looks like the BMW outbrakes himself going into the braking zone as Machiavelli makes a move on him. So Machiavelli up into P3, and we've got a 1.3 second gap. I was fairly confident though that I could increase that gap. You know, there's no slipstream involved now, so the Mercedes isn't going to be able to get a slipstream on me, and I think through this sector now the Porsche is a bit better than the Mercedes. Mercedes obviously a bit faster down the straight, and I think the last sector also the Porsche is probably equal to the Mercedes, because the Mercedes loves the slow corners. That's why I love the Mercedes AMG at tracks like Interlagos, and you know, the slower tracks with the slower sections in the middle sections. It's really good at slow corners and curbs, so it's not a bad car all through the last section. But the Porsche is also a very good car through this last section. It rides the curbs really well, and you can really get on the power. And I think the gearing helps the Porsche out a little bit, because the first gear is really high and it enables you to really get in that first gear and accelerate out the corners, because you can downshift it. For example, now as we go into this left hand corner, I can go down into first gear. You can see there cars like the Mercedes I don't think can go into first gear there. They probably have to do that in second gear, and I think that's where the Porsche is a little bit stronger. And you can see I've actually managed to build that lead up fairly comfortably already, so I've got P3 covered. Now it's about just trying to hold on to this position and try and keep Derek under a bit of pressure, so that if he makes any sort of error, at least I'm going to be close to capitalise on it and maybe pick up a position that is, you've always got to stay on it and push to the end. Although I was pretty sure now at this stage, final lap, 3 seconds behind, there's not much chance that Derek's going to make a stupid error. He's probably just going into cruise control now, as I'm now trying to do fairly similar thing, just trying to keep it smooth and not make an error. But again, you can see the gap only around 3 seconds. It's not really increasing even with that tyre advantage Derek's got. Obviously the tyre advantage now from an extra lap is quite a strong advantage, because obviously we're running such a high rate of tyre wear. I think, like I said, it was like times 13 tyre wear. It really does make a difference in these races if you've got fresher tyres on. So compromised with my strategy slightly by a silly error, but I think I've recovered this race fairly well at this stage, into P2. Got myself back into a reasonable point scoring position so far, and now I've just got to keep it clean all the way to the finishing line and come home with a P2. And not a bad start to the exhibition season in the Manufacturers Championship, although obviously I was looking at the possibility of the perfect result really. I felt like I had the speed, so was a little bit annoyed at myself, but then it was kind of one of them, you still got okay points, so you got to be reasonably happy with that result coming out of the race, because going into the race I would have took 2,400 points, but then you're in that situation when you come out of the race and you're still a little bit disappointed with yourself. But you can see down to 2.8 seconds again to Derek, so very evenly matched. And two totally different cars, very different seconds. You can see the difference on the straight. Just look from 2.8 seconds and look how it increases all the way, not even half the way the straight thing. He's already gained nearly 0.2 of a second. So that Golf is an absolute monster down the straight. And then I'm wondering if that Golf might get a bit of a nerfs at some point in the future for its straight line speed. I'm not too sure. I mean, they do seem to be nerfing some of the straight line cars, so it's possible that they might do that to the Golf at some point, but I don't know. I think I quite like the way some cars are stronger in certain areas, because it makes for interesting races like this. I was stronger in one section, Derek was stronger in another section, and I quite like that. So let's see what they do. It's anyone's guess with polyphony. They make some very random decisions with BOP in certain classes, like the Group 4 cars. We all know about the issues in there, but coming away with a P2, reasonably happy with that. Managed to get fairly comfortable over P3 in the end, a 3-second lead over just over 3-second lead over P3, so managed to make that comfortable. So reasonable points. We come away with, I think it is 2,400 points from that first round. Let's have a little look as it builds up. 2,404 points. Derek comes away with 2,500 and something points. So not a bad result. And we'll move on to round 2 and hope for better in that, which we will have uploaded soon. I have finished that race, obviously a little bit late with some of these videos at the moment, but it's quite good because at least I've got a backlog to keep me going with the videos. But obviously I'm going to be streaming again tonight as well. So hope you enjoyed that video. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously a silly mistake to make going into the braking zone, but like I say, these things happen. But it made for an entertaining race, and I pushed to the end and got myself back into P2, so reasonably happy with that. Anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed that. Make sure you click the notification button if you haven't already clicked it, so you don't miss any future videos. And obviously if you haven't already subscribed yet, feel free to subscribe. I do upload as much as possible and also stream as much as possible. Thanks again for watching, everyone.